Hi, this is Rico Figliolini, host of Peachtree Life, and today Prime Lunchtime with City Manager Brian Johnson, who I'm going to bring on shortly. But I just want to let you know what we're going to be talking about today. Basically, we're going to be talking about even with COVID, we have an environment where things are moving and shaking. Things are happening in this city that not only affects this city, but is some of it's like the first time ever, or things that are happening here not really happening anywhere else, like the 5G accelerator program, having the Secretary of Transportation visit us, a small city like ours, to discuss transportation, the French American Chamber of Commerce coming and moving into Peachtree Corners, plus a whole lot more. So let's get right into it with Brian. Hey, Brian, how are you?
Good, Rico. How are you?
Good. So let's talk a little bit about the Swiss ambassador and the Consul General coming for a visit from Washington to visit our little town of Peachtree Corners. What does that mean, and what can that mean when we have dignitaries like that visiting us?
Well, so this isn't the first time that we have had some international dignitaries. Most of the time, it's either the consul general, him or herself, out of their Atlanta consulate. Sometimes we have some trade ambassadors, but this time the consul general of Switzerland was joined by the Swiss ambassador himself, and
Mhm.
they came here for the purposes of taking a look at Curiosity Lab, taking a look at the technology and the different sectors that we have here, and to do so for the purposes of them maybe seeing if there are some opportunities for um, Swiss companies to potentially come in and use the facility on a ongoing or temporary basis, but see if there's not some synergy between Curiosity Lab and some Swiss tech companies, and they were very impressed.
Cool.
There was a lot of ideas thrown out. There's a lot of action items we have afterwards, but it is no secret, nor is it by chance that a lot of the international companies that we have here are a result of us having put ourselves in a position where somebody whose job from another country is to keep their eyes and ears, watching ways for them to further their country's companies, that they hear and see, and they're like, we want to come out there, and they do. And as a result, we have a lot of international activity here. We just had a Portuguese company that moved into the innovation center.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, that's what the Swiss were here to do. And I have high hopes that we're going to get some activity from them, and maybe we'll get some chocolate and watches and all the other
Right.
generalized things that come from Switzerland.
Well, let's move on then to the French American Chamber of Commerce that is actually going to move their offices to the Curiosity Lab. So, how'd that come about, and what does that mean also for technology here, and for companies from France maybe moving here?
Well, if there was, yeah, no easier segue than from one international one to the other, as we're talking about becoming more known on the international stage, the French American Chamber of Commerce, which exists here, obviously, like other chambers of commerce, is to provide a social, a civic link between companies from a particular country and ours.
Mhm.
We have relationships with others like the Israel American Chamber and others like that. But in this case, the French American Chamber had was doing its thing, and we kind of got on their radar screen. Specifically, in this case, we actually have a gentleman who was a board member of it. His name is Bertrand Lepoire. He lives here in Peachtree Corners.
Hmm.
His kids go to school here, very rooted in the community. And he reached out, very interested in what we were doing here, both personally and from his vantage point of being a board member. And we just started talking and introduced to each other, started getting included in the French American Chamber. We started doing things with them, and they started getting more interested in what we have going on. Well, fast forward, I don't know, a year or so, and the French government created a program called Le French Tech. And to paraphrase and boil it down, the program was essentially to pick, I believe it was 6 locations in the U.S. for the French government to choose as a targeted landing spot for French tech companies to come into the U.S. So there was kind of a competitive process. They threw this out to, cities throughout the U.S. and said, hey, we want to do this. We want to establish kind of a more formal pipeline. And we threw our hat in the ring. And of course, I say Peachtree Corners, but, oftentimes these things are a result of us having to educate people on the offerings and the benefits of being in Metro Atlanta. Obviously, if Peachtree Corners by itself was just by itself, I mean, we couldn't be handling some of this stuff. I mean, we're punching outside of our weight class as it is.
Right.
But the Metro Atlanta economic development ecosystem that's here, from the Metro Atlanta Chamber to the state's Department of Economic Development to Gwinnett County's Chamber, Partnership Gwinnett. There's just and lots of other, a ton of other organizations that help. We leverage that by reminding them that we are also part of Metro Atlanta, and there's a lot of all these offerings. So anyway, we threw our hat in the ring, and along with a city in Silicon Valley, one up in Research Triangle, I believe New York City, let's see, I think Austin, Texas are the locations. We were one of the 6. And so we are one of the 6. And the exact landing location within Metro Atlanta is the Curiosity Lab Innovation Center. And of course, once they get there, that opens the door for other things and they can move around. And, obviously we have relationships with Georgia Tech and ATDC and others. But their exact landing spot is here. And so the French American Chamber felt like it was in their best interest to further their mission of trying to help perpetuate, help expand and facilitate French tech companies doing various things in the U.S. that they would be best served to be physically located at the same location where these companies are coming in. So they move their offices out of the French consulate and into our innovation center. And so this Thursday, we got a big grand opening event where we're going to celebrate having a permanent French presence inside the innovation center for the purposes of facilitating technology, companies and research and testing here, Curiosity Lab from France.
If anything proves that technology opens borders, I mean, this is one of them, right? Internet, right? I mean, internet has shown that you can be anywhere and order anything and be delivered within a day, even within the day, within hours almost. So technology, 5G, autonomous vehicles, all that stuff. It's just to see that all happening here. And I appreciate what you were saying before about punching, in your weight class, because the Intuitive Surgical Company that is, announced some weeks ago that they're going to bring 1,200 new jobs to Peachtree Corners, couldn't have happened without the state also helping, right? Incentives from the state, from the city, from the county, I think, as well. So, all that. We don't live in a just a small little cylinder here. So we're taking the city through leadership, political leadership, as well as leadership on your end, is taking, I think, advantage of where we can to bring economic impact into the city. It's a cool thing to be able to have and talk about this and bring jobs here, over a period of time. And that doorway with the French American Chamber is, like you said, another place that once they're here, that could bring more work, more companies coming out here.
Yeah, I mean, you just never know. These portals sometimes open possibilities that you would never have. And so, and vice versa, there could be some American companies that find that there's this back and forth. It's not a one-way street. They may end up finding a market in France or a partner as a French company to help scale up their product that they wouldn't
Right.
have without it. So it's not always a one-way street. We like to stress that.
Right.
Obviously, we like to see the activity here, but if we're that conduit going the other
Hmm.
way, that means that people will talk and we'll get other companies here. So you
Yep.
know, very little investment to do this other than creating relationships, ensuring that the city continues to maintain a testing environment, this living laboratory that is very easy, inexpensive, but yet
Hmm.
secure to use, and words getting out and activities happening. And, it's sky's the limit right now.
Seems to be, and the world's changing, right? COVID and all that. I mean, we're seeing more of a move, at least through the Biden administration, away from petrol, um, trying to move away from petrol towards more sustainable energy and possibly electric or alternative vehicles. Um, so, I mean, the future's out there, right?
Yeah.
Forbes magazine even covered or highlighted a bit of what we were doing here, I think. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about that as well?
Yeah, I mean, we got on Forbes' radar screen about the some of the electric vehicle and activity that we have here, specifically the fact that we are both getting ready to have our, if you want to call it, kickoff. And I'll save some of this for the event, but of 4 autonomous shuttles from 2 different manufacturers, 2 different OEMs. Coincidentally, one of the 2 original equipment manufacturers, what OEM stands for, one of the 2 is actually a French company.
Uh,
But they were talking about that, as well as the electric vehicle research we have here to help facilitate what, like you said, might be a greater demand on the use or the need for batteries than
mhm.
we've ever seen. If President Biden's initiative and a lot of this infrastructure legislation is passed, there is a huge amount of pressure to get off the internal combustion engine and get into electric vehicles. Well, that's not as simple as some people think. You
Mhm.
still have a lot of battery charging, battery swapping, battery
Right.
disposal things that you got to talk about,
Mhm.
and so a lot of that's being done here, and so we Forbes took notice and did an article on us. So I get surprised every day myself. Sometimes that one, you know, where my CTO and I were talking about another article, and we pull it up, and sure enough, right there, Forbes comes up, and we're like, "Wow, we just got on Forbes." So it's kind of a wild ride right now.
Yeah, I would think. It's great to have national, um, attention like that. Local companies, local publications like the Atlanta Business Chronicle, featuring a story about Peachtree Corners, experience a real renaissance by attracting business. And that was a nice article that they wrote just the beginning of this month that they put out that talked a bit about, a recap of the jobs coming here, of companies that were going to leave but decided they were going to stay instead. Um, I mean, we're not talking about small amounts here. We're talking about, tens of thousands of and hundreds of thousands of square feet of office space, even during this COVID environment, right?
And Rico, you and I are both residents here. So if we put on our resident hat, if we didn't know what was going on, we would kind of be like, okay, what's the big deal with this? What's in it for me? Why does the Swiss ambassador or the French American Chamber, why do I care about any of it? And you just hit the nail on the head. And that is, what's happening is our local economy is benefiting from it immensely. Whether it's companies that were going to leave and did not,
Right.
whether it was, like Hapag Lloyd, right at the corner of Spalding and
Hmm.
Peachtree Parkway. They were
Yep.
looking to leave. And we were able to not only convince them not to leave, but then they closed another location and moved in here. And so they expanded by a couple hundred employees in that space. We have retained business. We have helped business expand by hundreds of employees. I mean, CarMax, like their first experience here, just
Hmm.
expanded. Solient, like their experience here.
Right.
And they hadn't been here a long time, but not only like their experience, but they like the fact that we've got a lot of energy and synergy around economic development and other
Mhm.
emerging companies, innovative companies, and they want to be a part of it. And then, of course, you go to the ones that's always the that gets the most press, and that's the recruitment. And we get some new companies here, but obviously, Intuitive being the big one recently. I mean,
Right.
here, just think about this. Aside from permanent jobs, aside from that, which we all like, it
Mhm.
means we have stable home values and healthy, community and all that kind of stuff. But Intuitive's business model, their campus they're creating here, which will have all of the training for all the surgeons that are working in hospitals on the Eastern Seaboard are
Mhm.
going to come here to get trained. And so part of the investment commitment Intuitive made to Georgia and Peachtree Corners are they're going to generate at least 16,000 overnight hotel room stays per year
Wow.
or more.
Wow.
I
Wow.
mean, just that. So Intuitive deciding to expand here, build their East Coast headquarters here,
Mhm.
create 1,200 plus jobs, exceeding $130,000 salary average. That's all great. Don't get me wrong, but then
Yeah,
you want to talk about local economy and how it'll help all of us as residents. Is That's a lot of hotel rooms by a
for
lot of
sure.
visiting surgeons. So these aren't
Mhm.
like ones that are, at least they shouldn't be, paupers. And not have a lot of disposable income, but they're
Right.
staying in a hotel here for at least a week, sometimes a month or longer, depending on how much training they're getting at once. And
Mhm.
they're needing to do something. And so that's restaurants, that's hotels, that's shopping, that's all sorts of things that feed our local economy. So this stuff does matter, even though it may be an international story. That's how you generate excitement, generate interest, generate, just awareness. And then we go from there.
Yeah, it's amazing how it just builds on itself. And you're right, the economic impact is way beyond just the jobs and the visits and stuff. So especially in this, we're in a city like Peachtree Corners that is still growing and finding its way over the past decade. With the Peachtree Corners Festival coming up in September, with all local events that are coming and even new ones that we don't even know are going to be coming this way. Obviously, there is that event, I think, happening in October also. Um, was that conference,
Oh,
art,
VX conference.
the VX conference, right?
If
So,
COVID doesn't, yeah, I mean, COVID,
well, right, that doesn't do it to us.
I mean,
So, yeah,
but Rico, if it doesn't happen because of COVID, it will be
hmm
postponed. It will not be canceled.
right. I'm sure there's events that are happening. We're a co-sponsor of Japan Fest, which is supposed to be happening at Gas South, but that was postponed just this week. They decided to postpone that. Um, so there are, these events that are going to be postponed. Then you got Shaky Knees in Atlanta, the concerts that are going to happen there out in the open, and they're still going, it seems. So, and they're starting up in 2 weeks or something. So, so we're still here, and this even more like the Secretary of Transportation came to visit, what, a couple of weeks ago, to talk a bit about to see what we were doing with the EV stations and what you were doing, what we're doing with the Curiosity Lab. So tell us about what that visit does for the Peachtree Corners city, having someone like that show up.
So we just got done talking a little bit about on the international front how it benefits us, but domestically, we also we stand to benefit by getting on certain people's radar screen. That started actually before Secretary Buttigieg was here with our representative to the U.S. House. That is Carolyn Bordeaux. She was
Right.
elected, what has it been, almost a year ago? And
Yeah.
I guess it was January when she came in, but she is very interested in technology, things that she can do in the suburbs to help with transportation, transit,
Mhm.
Just things that sometimes we think are only scalable in an urban area. She's really taken an interest, and up in DC, it appears that she had done what, I'm not sure what all she did, but she elevated Curiosity Lab to a point where Secretary Buttigieg had was essentially an advance team come out to
Mhm.
our location and asked if they could come out and essentially put me on notice that, look, we're here to see if this location is worthy of
Mhm.
the secretary coming out. And at the
Mm.
end of that hour of me talking to them and showing them some things, they were like, oh, yeah, he's coming here. And so, I don't know, 2 weeks later, he ultimately came here with, Representative Bordeaux and
Mhm.
with the Commissioner of Transportation for Georgia, Russell McMurray, and as well as a number of other,
Right.
local leaders from our, county commission chair to other state house, state representatives, state senators. Anyway, and the main benefit here were twofold. One is there are a number of agencies that regulate the activity that is going on right here. Two of them that we deal with a lot because of the companies that are wanting to test here
Mhm.
is NHTSA and FAA. Of course, we all know Federal Aviation Administration, they regulate everything that's in the air.
Right.
And so when it comes to drones, we are dealing with them a lot. These companies are dealing with them a lot. And the other was NHTSA, National Highway Transportation Safety Administration. They're the ones who regulate what happens on our roadways, or essentially what is or is not a vehicle. And so they're the ones regulating our autonomous vehicle activity here.
Mhm.
Well, both those agencies work for the Secretary of Transportation. And so
Mm.
when Secretary Buttigieg was here, one of the things he asked me when I was presenting is, what challenges am I seeing? And I did tell him, I said, one of the things we're seeing is we've got some not just cutting edge, bleeding edge technology that's happening here. And your regulatory agencies are oftentimes trying to play catch up to try to write regulations to regulate some of this stuff that's just emerging. And I said, what about maybe having some, or one of our challenges is that it's holding some of the, evolution of this technology back. They're ready to go, but they can't
Mhm.
because they're being held back because these agencies. And the whole time, the only time I saw him take out a little notepad thing from his coat and write down something was when I said that. So,
Mm.
we got some follow on action items, but I would love to see them maybe have a more active presence here to help facilitate some of
Yeah.
this. But so that's one. And then the second one is sometimes the city likes to oftentimes step up and be a part of the evolution of technology ourselves. And so it's nice for there to be things like the solar roadway that we've
Mhm.
got out here that we're doing first in the world testing on it, being on a public street attached to an active working electric vehicle charging station that's not pulling off the grid if it runs out of
Right.
power. I mean, these are some things that we're doing. So it's kind of cool sometimes for the city to say, yeah, maybe we were part of the evolution of that particular technology. And so Secretary and others wanted to see some of the things that are happening here, because
Mhm.
they're interested in how close or far away it is and what they can do to help. So it helps us on a number of fronts. But yeah, right now we've got things humming pretty well on both the domestic and the international front. We've got some people who have a little bit of rank, so to speak,
Mhm.
that are coming around, kicking the tires, seeing what's going on. So it's kind of cool. It's also kind of, can be fatiguing because they come with a lot of advanced parties, whether it's,
Yes, I'm sure.
protective detail, Secret Service, advanced,
Right.
so there's a lot of that. I've,
Right.
had to bone up on my protocol skills just to know which side of the table to sit on, of some of these people. But it's a
Right.
cool problem to have.
I would think exciting problem to have, and good friends to have. I mean, Carolyn Bordeaux being able to bring down Secretary of Transportation. I mean, these are all good things for the
Yep.
city to have. political strength there, and interest from federal government and the state. And the city, like you said, is doing a lot of things too, right? The EV charging stations, I think the city is providing um, administration of funds on for businesses as well as local people that want to be able to have their own EV charging stations. Um, and that's an application process, I believe, that has to go into the city. So, I
Correct.
mean, cities promoting stuff like that. So if someone wants to get in, if some business wants to put 5 EV stations at their business locations, they could go to the city to talk about that, right? Um, so there's all that going on. That's like could be, you could consider that almost national stuff, like interest and things. But then we have local things going on. So let's cut a little bit into that as well and let people know what's going on a little bit. There's new restaurants coming in. I know that the city approved several licenses, liquor licenses that were approved, like for Fly Chef Restaurant, Crabs R Us is coming. Um, so there's a bunch of that going on. So the city, even though people talk about going out, restaurants and stuff, there are restaurants opening in the city. There is still hard to find employees, right? I'm still seeing signs all over the place, help wanted, anywhere from $10 to $15 an hour. Um, I don't know what the city can do with that, but certainly there is a demand out there for more employees to more jobs out there. It seems, at least on a service level that we're talking about.
There are, I mean, we have
I think we lost.
facilitated job fairs, both for restaurant and hospitality, because the hotels are hurting as well. But yeah, we certainly are seeing, we've got a number of restaurants that aren't even open all day for the normal times that they would because there's not a lot of wait staff. Uncle Jack's Meat House has not been able to open for lunch
Right.
um, the entire time that they've been here.
Which one?
Uncle Jack's.
Oh, really? Okay, I heard something
Yeah,
like that. And I saw Salada also has limited their hours. It's funny because I was putting a dinner order in on their app, and I got to the end, it says they're closed. I'm like, what? And they're only limited from 11 to 4 p.m. is what they're doing.
right.
So yeah, it's not. There is work out there, or at least a certain type of work, part time and stuff. But those rates, those hourly rates are going up. I mean, they just have to find their way there. Um, Also, the Grace Korean Church, they got approved, right, for their special use permit.
Yep.
Um, and Summit Gas Station, they were looking for some buffer reductions. I'm glad that actually the city didn't go with that. That was denied that special use. That would have really cut down the buffer in those areas. Glad the city looked at that.
Yeah,
Um,
mayor and council did look at that and said, look, were it not for you wanting to build a gas station, which requires a bigger footprint than a normal, like a different commercial one, because you've got to have the pump separate from the building and you got certain distances. So it takes a bigger footprint. So council felt like, look, there was no hardship because the owner could build plenty of things on there, plenty of uses. He had just wanted to do a gas station and it just takes too much. And it's not to say that they thought it was a bad location if had it not been for the fact that there was existing residential
right.
with a buffer that would have been removed and it would have affected their quality of life.
And I'm surprised that they didn't look at that to begin with. I think they bought that property knowing what it was there, and they should have asked those questions ahead of time to see if there was any interest in allowing them to do that.
You'd be surprised what people buy with the assumption that they're going to get a rezone, Rico. It's
Yes,
sad, and then they get all worked up and threaten
right.
lawsuit. But yeah, I mean, do your due diligence.
I'm actually at this point, I'm not surprised. There are people out there that will buy stuff and not even do the due diligence and just expect to get what they want, which is like
Yeah.
ridiculous. Anything else going on in the city coming up that we should know about, that we should share?
I mean,
on the
Fall
podcast?
Festival, we've got, so that's coming in almost just under 2 weeks. That's of
Yeah,
course a huge deal. We are looking to do a decathlon. Our
saw that.
next podcast we can talk about it'll be sometime in mid-November.
Hmm.
A decathlon around a unique one around the fitness stations at our fitness trail by the town green.
All right. I spoke with City Councilman Alex Wright about that, I think.
Yep.
And he actually shared the logo on it, which looks really cool. And you guys are adding, and this is like a first, I guess, a city-sponsored event versus an event that the city allows happening in a place. So the city is actually putting this event on. Um, and you're adding 10 more pieces of equipment, I guess, to that
Well,
path of
no, we're
fitness.
adding 3 more to get to 10.
I'm sorry, 3 more. That's what I
So
meant.
we'll have
Um,
10 individual stations
right,
that people will rotate through to see. They'll have to do certain things a certain amount of time. And
right.
the quicker you can do it, the more time you have to rest. And it'll be 5-minute increments before you have to move to the next one. So, yeah, we can talk about that. So,
Yeah.
another thing that gets activity to the town center,
Hmm.
another event that's unique to the area
Yeah.
that offers a certain segment of the population something to do. So we're looking forward to that. But no, we talk about some of these more high profile things, but
Right.
we still have potholes to patch, and
Yes.
we still got other things going on that are not as sexy but not no less important.
No, of
And
course.
still like to remind everybody we're doing all of this stuff without property tax. So still trying to keep costs of living in the city very low.
It, it's amazing that the city can do all it's doing without property tax because you see other cities, every other city around here has a property tax. So the fact that
Yeah.
our city doesn't is really good. You know,
Well, it's our
um,
local economy. I mean, we've got to make sure that's strong. And if it's generating sales tax and
yeah.
good business license, then we can do this. It's when we take our foot off the gas is where we're going to get into trouble. So we have no intention of doing that.
And you were talking about events and stuff like the festival and the decathlon. I mean, even the cornhole leagues. I didn't realize they attract they had, I think, almost 200 registrants for the league here in Peachtree Corners alone. And they operate these things all over Atlanta. So even the little
Or,
things like that.
well, yeah, or the Georgia Clemson game. I mean, that one out at the town green was very
Okay.
well attended because
Okay.
people are like, look, I can watch these games at home.
Hmm.
Obviously, I could go to it, but then I could also have a unique experience and I could leave the house. I can be outside, watch it on a big screen, great
That's right.
weather, do it with friends,
Yep.
have a libation and have a great experience. And nothing makes an experience, a Georgia football game, any better than when we beat a top 5 team. So
That's for
that
sure.
really made it a lot. That's exactly right. That made it even better. So yeah, I mean, little things
Well,
add up. Quality of life is why
yeah.
people want to live where they do.
That's true. I mean, even this weekend coming up, for those that might hear this before this weekend, September 11th is another concert, night music on the town green. Sundogs, it's going to be performing. So all these things really provide a good atmosphere for everyone. I did have a question for you too. I've noticed, probably should have asked you this before we started the podcast, but it just came to mind. Earth moving. Behind Chase Bank, that property that would, I guess, is the Roberts property. And I don't know if that's earth moving or them just putting out trucks over there and stuff. But anything new going on there? That
No, the behind Chase Bank, not right now. You have 2 things that are going on in the area. The old Black Walnut
right
building was
is that
renovated. What's the name of the steakhouse? H&W?
HW? Yeah, H and
Yeah.
W, I think.
So they did some renovation in the back, so it could have been that. And then, of course, our multi-use trail
That's right.
is going in along the creek there that
Hmm.
separates the lazy dog and the parking deck from the other side.
Yep.
And it's got a trail that is both elevated, up on, stilts, if you will.
Right.
And then it also has one that is going to go down into the creek itself. And so there's some construction going on with that. So they could have been pre-staging on one side because it just made it easier to get in than trying to go through the town center. But those
And
are the only things happening.
okay. Anything new on the multi-use development that was approved with that reuse of the 4-story, 5-story office building and those 1-story condos?
5720 Peachtree Parkway, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so right now they are working on the, official architectural, construction documents and the final engineering of the plat. They will take, these developers will take a project only so far before they have the rezoning, because if they spend too much money and they don't get it, then
Sure.
all that work was flushed down the toilet.
Sure.
So they are doing that, and I have been told that they're hoping to break ground on that before the end of the calendar year.
All right. Cool. Okay. And I guess one last thing is the Jimmy Carter Boulevard, where the old Upton's shopping center, I guess. It used to be Upton's department store in there, or one of the gyms were in there after that, I think. That sold at one
Oh,
point.
LA Fitness.
LA Fitness, right? Anything new? I know they sold at one point. I think it was only 40% occupancy or something like that. Just curious if there was anything new going on there that you're hearing.
There is. They have a new owner that's considering some options, including some discussions with our redevelopment authority.
Excellent. Okay, cool. Good. So maybe we'll get more news on that. I know that's an area that's ripe for development, that whole
It is.
side of Jimmy Carter. So this was great. Appreciate the coming out, giving us your Zoom call, so to speak, on this.
Well, Rico, as always, thanks for the opportunity and the vehicle for the city to allow some of this stuff to get out. It's important, and the more educated and knowledgeable our citizenry is, the better. So I appreciate that opportunity for those who watch to be a little bit more informed than they were before the show started.
I'm glad to hear that. And Peachtree Corners Magazine, we're working on the next issue for the October-November. I'm putting that together. We'll have that by the end of the year. By the end of this month, we'll have that all in place. So keep checking us on social media, guys. If you like this podcast, certainly share it with your friends. Also give a review on Apple or Spotify or any of those where we're on. This way we're more searchable as well. And check out our sister podcast, which is starting up with 3 new episodes in the next few weeks. The Capitalist Sage will be talking to local business people. One of the leaders of ASHRAE, in fact, will be on the podcast soon. So talking about things going on here in the metro area, business-wise, and what we could learn from them. So check that out. Go to livinginpeachtreecorners.com and learn more about this city. Thank you. Bye. Thanks, Brian.